Hello friends and welcome to the channel. Let me show you how to make this sweater on the Brother KX350. Now, this pattern was designed specifically for the Brother KX350, but it can be adapted very easily to any standard gauge knitting machine. So, if you're looking for the link to the pattern itself, it can be found at my Etsy, which I will have a link to in the description. Go ahead and give me a like and a subscribe, and let's get started. So we take our working yarn and we are just going to want to make a little slip knot at the end here and leave enough of a tail to weave in later. Just put that in over your first needle. And then you kind of just take your index finger, place it underneath your needles like this. What we're going to be doing with our index finger is we're kind of using it to pull the yarn away from our body to the left. So this is a bit of an exaggerated example, but push over, and then I take this yarn and I wrap it around like that. It's literally like writing an E. You're going to go like this. You're going to make this motion with your hand. And you want to try to find the sweet spot between too tight and too loose. Too loose of a cast on and your stitches get all stretchy and like overly loose compared to your next rows, and too tight and they will not be stretchy enough and will be weird compared to the rest of your stitches. So you just want to do just tight enough that they don't flop around and loose enough that they have a little bit of wiggle room if you do pull it. Now, if you have one of the larger sizes, I'm making a medium here, so it just barely fits on my machine, you might not have enough needles on your machine to accommodate all of the needles that I recommended for the cast on. So in that situation, what I recommend is splitting your cast on into two. So you would effectively have two front panels and two back panels. And for one of the front panels, you'd do everything in the directions except for one side. So you'd have one side, like the center of your panel would just be straight, and then the left side or the right side would have the shaping, the increases, the decreases, all of that would exist on the left side other than the neckline shaping, which will happen in the middle. If you are still confused on how to do that, a good example would be my cranberry cardigan, because for that you literally do split the front panel into two because it's a cardigan. So imagine, if you watch that video, imagine that instead of creating ribbing in between the two front panels, you're just going to seam them together. Now that all of our stitches are cast on, we're going to want to make sure our tension dial is correct at 5.5 and our row counter is at 0. And now we're going to knit 16 rows. The first row I always go extra slow just because it can be a little finicky. For the second row, I push out all my needles because we only have one row of work stitches, so we don't have enough actual material to hang any of our weights on. Now add your weights if you think you have enough space to do so. And here we've run into a little bit of a problem. So if this happens to you, how would you fix it? So this one is rather simple actually. Looks like the top few stitches just haven't been knit for whatever reason. So we're just going to drop a stitch so we can see what we're looking at. There you go. Pick up our last worked loop. Make sure it's underneath all of your active yarn and put it back on the needle. And then you just want to knit the first strand going up. So make sure your loop is behind this little lever, and then kind of just grab the next one up, the next float up, and pull it through. And then you just repeat with all the other ones. Just grab the next guy. Make sure only grabbing one at a time. And voila, there you go. And now that I know that that's a problem zone, I'm adding another weight there just to kind of see if that will solve the problem for me. And now we just keep working. I'm still trying to get to 16 rows. There you go, now we're at 16. So now we're going to work on manually creating the ribbing with our latch hook tool. If you have a ribber, you could have done it that way. I don't have a ribber, so we're going to do it manually. So to do that, we're going to skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and then push 2 out. And we're going to continue that the whole way. All right, and it should look like the same pattern all the way across. And now that you've done that, we are going to drop these guys pretty much all the way down. All the way to the E-wrap cast on. Because the yarn that we're working with is sticky, I guess you could say, like it catches on itself very easily, you can drop both, and as you can see here, this one, the right one, out of these 2 dropped ones is still up here. So I'm just going to focus on the left one for now. And so now we take our dropped bit of stitches, and you want to find the E-wrap cast on loop. And it might have shrunk because you pulled on it like I did. Oops. And you kind of want to expand that if you can, and then get your latch hook in there and grab the first bar up and pull through, and then you just repeat that for the whole row, or I guess the whole column. Oop. Like I said, this yarn is a little sticky, so allow yourself to repeat steps and allow this to take some extra time, because it just will. But we will get to work with a very pretty fluffy yarn. Okay, and now we put it back on our needles, if I can reach it. There we go. And then I do that with the row next to it as well. So we'll continue dropping this guy down all the way. Sometimes it will get stuck. Just kind of give it a tug. There we go, down to the E-wrap cast on. And then back up. All right, there you go. And now for every single stitch that you've pushed out here, you're going to repeat that step. Now is a good time to get a show or a podcast going, because this will take a little bit of time. Now that we are done with creating our ribbing, we are going to repeat the following pattern 8 times. So we're going to knit 3 rows, and then we're going to make a simple decrease on both sides, and then we repeat that. By the time we've done 8 repeats of that step, we'll be on row counter 40. We also want to change our tension dial to 6. Let's get started. Here is our first repeat. So for this simple decrease, we're going to go 3, 6. We're going to take 6 of these stitches over 1. And then we're going to push this needle back out of work. So what ends up happening is this one needle right here has 2 stitches on it. So it creates a simple decrease, and we do that on the left side as well. And now we just add some stitch markers in, one on either side of the panel. This will help us seam it together later. And then we're just going to knit 10 more rows. Now we're going to work on the right side neck shaping. Our carriage should be on the right over here. We're going to set this carriage to hold. And we're going to move the center 10 stitches into position E. There we go, center 10. And then we're also going to move all of these left guys into position E as well. The reason we move the 10 first is just to get a visual representation of these 10, because we're going to basically never knit these, but we will be knitting everything on either side. So just push these all over into position E, and then we're going to want to set our tension dial back to 0. So we're going to repeat this first pattern 3 times, or until our row counter is equal to 6. So we're going to knit 1 row, and right away you can see that our carriage is on the right setting because none of these guys got knit. And then we're going to take this piece of yarn and wrap it, and then we're going to knit back. And now we will move 2 needles out into position E. And then we repeat. Knit, wrap, and if you need to, this is a good place to put a weight. Knit, 2 out, knit, wrap, knit, 2 out, and then we do the same thing 3 more times, except for this time we're only going to push 1 needle out. So knit, wrap, knit, 1 needle out, knit, wrap, knit, 1 needle out, and knit, wrap, knit, one needle out. And now we're going to knit 24 rows just as normal, and by the time we're done with this, our row counter is going to equal 36. And now we cast off this section here with waste yarn. And I'm actually just going to remove it real quick from my machine. There we go. And then that center 10 or 12 that we referenced before, we want to make sure that stays on hold, but the rest of these need to go back into work. So you can see here that my remaining stitches are more than 10, but that's because here are our center 10, and then these are from the on hold stitches that we knit in the last step. So don't drop those because we need them. And we're just going to repeat everything that we did on the right side over here on the left side. Carriage is still on hold, our row counter is back to 0, and we start by going from the left, knitting 1. Ooh, okay, and there's a mistake. Let me show you what I did real quick. So I forgot to push these back. So I'm just going to continue knitting. And as you can see, I knit a row over here. This is a super easy fix. Just pop these guys out. Gently remove your yarn. And then push them back. Now we wrap our yarn. Two out. Knit, wrap, knit, two, knit, wrap, knit, two, knit, wrap, knit, one, knit, wrap, knit, one, knit, knit, one. And now we knit 24 just as normal. And now we cast off this side over here with waste yarn. And then we just remove that real quick. And now we set our carriage back to normal, and we cast off the remaining stitches with waste yarn. Here's a quick pre-blocked look at our sweater up to now, just so you can kind of know what it's supposed to look like. If you are looking at this and thinking, wow, that's a very wide neckline and it's going to get wider with blocking, you're right, but also don't worry. We're going to add some very cute chunky ribbing here, which will make the neckline not so wide. So that's what it looks like now, and on to the back panel. Now for the back panel, we are going to start the same way as our front panel. You're going to cast on the same amount of stitches, you're going to turn that into ribbing, and then you're going to work on your decreases, and then you knit 50 rows as normal and add your stitch markers. And now we're going to knit 30 rows as normal. We are going to cast off with a few rows of waste yarn. So our next step is going to be to create the yoke pleat in the back of our panel. So to help illustrate this technique, what I have here is a few diagrams. So this is the shape we're going to be creating. And if you think about this shape just flat, as if it's the back of our panel, these are what it looks like. And I know it looks chaotic, but you got this. So the first thing you want to do is take your panel, make sure you're wrong side facing, and you want to find your center stitch and then the 23 stitches in between. And these are what we're going to be using to create that pleat. So step one here is to put our center stitch onto the center of our panel. Step two is to count out 11. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And this stitch is the rightmost stitch in our X1 group. So what that essentially means is these stitches, the X1 group stitches, the 4 of them, will go directly next to our center stitch. So because we know there's 4 of them, and this is the rightmost one, we need to make sure that we leave 4 spaces. So this one goes on the 4th stitch. We find the next one. Cool. And now we do the same on the left. We need to count out 11. 11. And same deal here. This is the leftmost one out of the 4 stitches, so we need to give it 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 stitches. So now we have our X1 group of stitches done. So that's these and these. And maybe now you can start to see how this will sit on the machine. If this right here is the first row of the machine, this is a row that's sitting on top of it, but closer to you, if that makes sense. So this is the stitch closest to the machine, and this is a stitch in between. This is the stitch closest to you. And this is it flat. So next we're going to focus on the green section, which is X2. And X2 is also a group of 4 stitches, and it's very easy to know what's next in X2 because it's right after X1. So here you can see that's our first stitch after this group of stitches that's on the needles already. And we know from the drawing that it's going to go whoop and then back to the center. So this stitch just goes right on top of its buddy. And then this one goes one to the right, one more to the right, and one final stitch to the right. And you should have 3 remaining. And we do the same on the left side. So this stitch on the same one as its buddy, this stitch one more to the left, one more to the left, final stitch on the left, and then you should have 3 stitches remaining. And now for the final 3, this is our X3 group. And as you can see, they're the final stitches and the stitches that are closest to us on the machine. So these do not overlap like the last ones did with the final stitch on the edge here. So you, instead of going right here, you're gonna go 1 in. So skip the first one on the outside and then go 1, 2, 3. And same over here. Skip the first one on the outside, go 1, 2, 3. And now you got it. So I strongly recommend, in fact, I would say part of the instructions is to push your needles out completely because there's so many stitches on these guys now. It's quite cramped and it's easy for your machine to make a mistake. Now you just put all your regular stitches back on your machine. And I'm going to show you a quick overhead view. And here you can see the actual shape that I drew. So it kind of makes a squiggly shape. And then this, imagine the center one gets pushed all the way up here. And you can see the same shape. And this can be done with different numbers. Like you can do a different number of stitches for all of those X groups. I tested it out with 3, so that would be like 3 here, 2. And it just was too tiny. It didn't really give me the right shape that I wanted. I found that 4 is the magic number. If you're not sure that it turned out how you liked it, like if you're not sure you really did the right steps and you kind of just want to see before knitting and potentially like not really knowing where to rip back to, you could just knit a little bit with some waste yarn and then you can see how it looks. And now we knit 4 rows. And now we're going to start working on the neck shaping for the back of the panel. For the extra small through medium, we have a center 10 we're putting on hold, and the large through 2XL, we have a center 12. And just like last time, we're going to start by putting all of our left side stitches out into position E, and we're going to set our carriage to the hold setting. And this time we're only going to do 2 repeats, and we're only going to do a decrease of 1. So previously on the front panel, we started by doing decreases of 2 by pushing 2 out. We're only going to do 1. So we knit, wrap, knit, push 1 out, that's 1 repeat, and then we knit, wrap, knit, and then you cast off with waste yarn, push 1 out, and then you knit 4 rows just as normal. And then we do the same on the left side. All right, and now we just repeat the same steps, but on the left. And now we just cast off with waste yarn our remaining center stitches. And now we're going to seam together the shoulders. So you can see I have both layers on my machine
And
here.
what we'll do
the first
is we will
just
cast
off like normal,
right side
with
facing
both
and the second is wrong
stitches
side
at one
facing.
time. And as you can see, the right sides are together. And for now, we only want to seam together one of the shoulder panels, and we're gonna leave the other one undone so that we can easily create the collar around the neckline. And next we need to put all of our stitches for the collar back on our machine. And for some of these, you'll see that they're the waste yarn stitches, and those you pick up just as normal. And then as some of them you'll see don't have waste yarn, and that is the section that we did just as normal without any decreases or anything. So for these, you're gonna pick up 2 and then skip 1. And an important thing to keep in mind is you want your final amount that is on the machine to equal a multiple of 5 plus 3. So I would aim to get 83 stitches on your needles. And now we're going to take our second color, and we are going to knit 4 rows at tension number 5. Okay, and now we're going to change to tension dial 4.5, and we're going to knit 4 rows in that. And now we change our tension to 4, and we knit 4 rows in tension 4. And now we want to knit our turning row, so we're going to knit 1 row in tension dial 6. And now we flip what we just did, but backwards. So we go back to tension dial 4, and we're going to knit 4 rows. And then we go to 4.5 and we knit 4 rows. And then we go back to tension dial 5 and we knit 4 rows. Okay, and now we're going to follow the same pattern that we did for our ribbing, and we're going to skip 3 and drop 2 all the way to the end. And now, just like the ribbing we did before, we're going to drop our needles down and then knit them back up with our latch hook. So now we want to fold our ribbing over, and to do that we are going to pick up the corresponding purl bump from the cast on here and placed it on its same needle. And then once they're all folded over and placed on the same needle, then we will just cast off. And now we just hand seam this collar section that we just knit, and then we'll throw our shoulder seam back on the needles like we did just before for this seam, and we'll seam that up as well. And after we do that, we're going to work on our sleeves. Now we're going to knit the sleeve panel. To do this, you're going to want to pick up the stitches in between your stitch markers here. What I like to do is pick up 2 and then skip 1, and you'll end up with approximately 63 stitches on your needles. Now we make sure our tension dial's at 6 and our row counter is at 0. And we're going to knit 80 rows as normal. So we want to have 33 active needles in work for the sleeve cuff. And to do that, we're going to put multiple active stitches on the same needle. So how I like to do this bit is I like to identify my edge needles, which are here, and start on the left, pick up my first stitch, pick up my second stitch, and put it back on the same needle. And now we go all the way over to the right here, and we pick up our second to last stitch, place it on the needle, and pick up our last stitch and place it on the needle. And then I just kind of like to work left to right, pick up a stitch, place it on the needle, pick up a stitch, oops, place it on the needle, and just all the way across. And you may have a couple needles where you either have to triple it up or have just one stitch that you pick up, but basically you just want to make sure that you fill out these 33 stitches here with everything that is currently on hold. Now we switch our row counter to 0, and we are going to be using our color B, our pink yarn. We're going to start by knitting 4 rows in tension dial 5, 8 rows in tension dial 4.5, 4 more rows in tension dial 4. And then we're going to knit 1 row in tension dial 6, and then reverse the steps that we just did back up. So that is 4 rows in tension dial 4, 8 rows in tension dial 4.5, and 4 rows in tension dial 5. And now we skip 3 and push 2 out, and skip 3 and push 2 out, and we're just going to repeat that to the end. And then we drop our needles that are out, and we're going to knit those back up to create our ribbing. And now we just want to pick up the corresponding stitch and put it on our needle, and this will fold over our sleeve for us. And then we just cast off. And now you just need to seam up your jacket and you're all set. A little tip is these stitch markers can help you see pretty clearly where these corners should meet. So just keep an eye on that when you're doing your seaming. And now you have your sweater. I hope you all enjoyed the video. The sweater itself has some really interesting construction bits, and that allows it to have a very nice flowy fit, which is perfect for a Sunday sweater like this one. So thank you again for watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more like this, please be sure to like and subscribe. And if you're interested in buying the pattern itself, you can always search for it and other patterns like it on my Etsy. Link in description. See ya!